Hello everyone, on this YouTube video today, my Jurassic World is really coming alive, I do say, because my dinosaurs have a new habitat today. So one could say we're building a dinosaur diorama today. The last video we did, you might say, was making some prehistoric trees, I say. So today we do have more on the way, and we'll be making a place to plant them, I do say. And as I make this dinosaur diorama product today, we'll be talking about Jurassic World Rebirth's newest mutants, you might say. So for my clever segue into the topic of the day, looks like the Jurassic World Rebirth movie will be dividing the community even more, I say. But before I get too carried away with the poetry today, the D-Rex is not the only mutant in this movie, I do say. David Kemp himself confirms this to Empire magazine, just ahead of their big Jurassic World Rebirth exclusive. And before we talk about what this new mutant is exactly, there are some other noteworthy bits of information in this new article. Gareth Edwards says of the D-Rex, which I'm sure a lot of you are already aware, its official name is now Distortus Rex, which is a bit of a cringeworthy name, to be honest, but nowhere near as bad as Indominus Rex either. Now, I do realize there are quite a few fans of the Indominus Rex, but I'm just going to be brutally honest, when I first heard its name, I did laugh. But before I get too sidetracked on cringeworthy dinosaur names in this franchise, but apparently we're supposed to pity the D-Rex just as much as we are supposed to fear it. Essentially, Gareth wanted us to feel sorry for it as well as terrified, because its deformities have obviously caused it some pain, and there's an encumbrance to it. IML's David Viggory tells Empire magazine. Now, in all honesty, I do quite like this approach, even though I've had some mixed feelings about the D-Rex from the start. And I know this will probably interest others as well, as I've seen this hope circulating that the mutant wouldn't just be presented as a bad guy, or perhaps a better way to put it is a villainous monster. But not only that, but a pitiful creature suffering from its own deformities. Past films in this franchise have dabbled in this concept. Examples including the Indominus Rex and the Indoraptor as well, especially for the Indominus Rex at the start of Jurassic World, as Owen Grady highlights the fact that it's been deprived of social interactions, and has lacked any significant social bond throughout her entire life other than a crane. But in all honesty, they do kind of drop the ball on that one as the movie progresses towards the end, where basically the Indominus just starts killing everything for sport. And at that point in the film, well, in all honesty, they're just kind of portraying her as a monster, unfortunately. Now, as someone who personally likes seeing animals, well, just being animals, and can easily acknowledge the fact that animals being animals can still be absolutely terrifying, I definitely think this will be a bit of a redeeming quality for the D-Rex. Especially for me, if we get to see this mutant, well, behave more animalistic. Now, I also think this concept might be quite interesting, if one of the most monstrous looking creatures in the franchise ends up being one of the most animalistic. Now, I'm going to admit that's probably a bit of a high hope, but perhaps it's very aggressive all the time because it's in constant pain. And in all honesty, that is a bit of a dark concept, but if well explored, I honestly would really appreciate that type of aspect about it. Now, in all honesty, this might not exactly be the most popular of opinions, but I'm gonna share it anyway. I'm not exactly a big fan of the concept of a mutant instead of an actual dinosaur. So having it be confirmed that there are indeed more mutants is not exactly, well, great news for me personally, but I'll get into that later on during this video. In the meantime, another interesting point in the article is the line, "Even the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus is back on the scene." Now, honestly, I do much prefer this newer Spinosaurus design that they have. It's not exactly perfect, but I do quite like it. However, I do realize that there is a lot of people out there who would probably rather prefer the Jurassic Park 3 design originally. Now, unfortunately, until we see otherwise, I'm going to assume that this line of text in the article isn't really exactly meant the way that us Jurassic fans would use it. When people in the fandom particularly say Jurassic Park 3's Spinosaurus, it's more often than not that we mean that exact design of Spinosaurus. Now, in all honesty, I think that this writer just meant that the Spinosaurus as a species only ever seen before in Jurassic Park 3. Now, there are two reasons why I think this. For one, I think that would be a major spoiler to reveal that early on, and two, well, I think it would be overkill to add a fourth Spinosaurus, on top of the three new ones that we have already seen, and on top of all the other dinosaurs that we already know are in this film. So if you're a fan of the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3 in particular, and you would like to see its, well, triumphant return, I would advise some caution with that one. Basically, don't get too excited. Or conversely, if you don't want to see that design return, don't get too worried. Because personally, I don't think that this line means exactly what we think it would mean. Because obviously, well, these writers aren't exactly super fans of these franchise, not in the way that perhaps I am or some of my viewers are. So essentially, they don't really necessarily mean these lines the exact way that we would probably interpret them. So to sum things up very briefly, essentially, I'm sure all this line means is that the Spinosaurus as a species is returning and not the exact one from Jurassic Park 3. However, that's just my 2 cents on that topic. But now, let's go back to the second mutant. Not only does David Koepp reveal that we indeed have a second mutant, he also reveals which species this mutant consists of and what it's called. Now, Empire Magazine writes, as well as the D-Rex, we will meet the winged Mutadons, a combination of pterosaur and raptor, says the screenwriter David Koepp. This 100% confirms the rumor that has been circulating around for a while now, which is a second mutant, specifically a winged raptor. Now, be sure to comment below what you think of the Mutadon being added to Jurassic World Rebirth. Now, if you're just here for the news, well, unfortunately, that was about it. Now, basically, the rest of this video will be me answering the very same question that I just asked all of you, which happens to be what I think about the Mutadon being added to Jurassic World Rebirth. Now, slight trigger warning for some of my viewers. I probably do have a slightly unpopular opinion, but it's just my personal opinion. And making videos, well, on these kind of topics is kind of just my hobby. So to be blunt, it's really not all that deep, and don't take anything personally. And I will acknowledge the fact that we haven't seen the Mutadon yet, so this opinion might be slightly premature. But either way, let's have a bit of a discussion today. Now, I'm going to admit, I was never really a big fan of the D-Rex right from the start. Now, I do like monsters, and I think monster movies are really cool, and any of you regular viewers are obviously well aware of that fact. And I do have a very special appreciation for cool movie monster designs. I just don't particularly like monsters in a franchise that is perfectly set up to show us dinosaurs. They could have picked literally any dinosaur or prehistoric creature from hundreds of millions of years of evolution, and perhaps maybe just tweak the design a little bit to suit the Jurassic aesthetic. Because I'm not exactly, well, Team Paleontology 100% accuracy here. However, if I'm going to nitpick, the Giganotosaurus design was really bad. I didn't really recognize that thing initially as a Giga when I first saw it. And personally, I thought it bared more resemblance to an Agrocanthosaurus. And with the topic of the Giganotosaurus on hand, I definitely wouldn't mind if they mixed and matched with different eras, because obviously those two would have never met. But the gist of it being that there is so much freedom there to show fans of dinosaurs, well, dinosaurs. A creature like the D-Rex, in my honest opinion, could be in just about any monster movie. I just personally don't think it belongs in the Jurassic World franchise. And I'm going to admit, if it's not properly rooted in this science fiction story about bringing dinosaurs back to life, my enthusiasm for any further Jurassic movie at that point might be severely diminished. With the D-Rex being already the center topic of one of my previous videos while making the Tyrannosaurus Rex, I basically instated that the only way that this thing's going to really make sense in the Jurassic World franchise is if it's basically some weird bug mixture between a dinosaur and an insect. Otherwise, I don't get it. So if I'm going to be honest, the whole concept of this D-Rex kind of seems a bit wasteful to me so far, because they could have just started a new franchise with, well, cool monsters. And well, at that point, my thought would be a lot different. It'd be like, oh, okay, that's awesome. I definitely want to go see that. But I guess in retrospect, the D-Rex is here, so I'm just gonna have to accept the fact. So let's see what they do with it, and hopefully it doesn't take away too much screen time from, well, real dinosaurs. And once again, I can't emphasize this one enough. Hopefully it's orchestrated well into the plot. That has basically been, well, my state of mind leading up forward to this film. But with all that controversy aside, I am still rather excited to see this movie. I just have my concerns. Now, with all that just being about the D-Rex having the second species of mutant confirmed, kind of makes me think, well, that's another made-up species taking more screen time away from dinosaurs. And yeah, maybe it does look cool, and hopefully they do use it well. Just like the D-Rex, well, I still kind of do have a glimpse of hope for that one. I'm still really heavy on the opinion that, well, you could have just picked a dinosaur and then just write something incredible about that. I mean, what's wrong with nature? Now, obviously, Jurassic World Rebirth does still have plenty of dinosaurs. It might even prove to, well, have too many dinosaurs. Because just going off from the list of species on the top of my head, we have T-Rex, Spinosaurus, Velociraptor, Titanosaurus, Dilophosaurus, Parasaurolophus, Ankylosaurus, Myosaurus, and of course we have Mosasaurus. And Quetzalcoatlus. Yes, I know those last two aren't dinosaurs. And I'm sure there are many more dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures. To the point where I do kind of have to wonder, not only could you have really easily replace those mutants with dinosaurs, but did you really even need to Frankenstein 2 additional species on top of this dinosaur roster you already have? Like, really, you needed 2 more antagonistic animals in this script? So for me, 1 mutant was unnecessary, and 2 just seems a bit redundant. And going back to the topic of cringy names, Mutadon, I mean, that speaks for itself, I guess. Distortus Rex is kind of one thing, still cringy, but I will give them some benefit of the doubt on that name, given the fact that it bears a lot of resemblance to the Latin word distortus, which I'm pretty sure they basically based that off of because dinosaur names are primarily Latin, but this one definitely just sounds like a, well, cool toy for kids, which there's nothing exactly wrong with that, but It's tacky. And yes, I am cynical enough to think that that's obviously the main point of this whole creature, as well as the D-Rex. Because we even had Garrett Edwards promoting the D-Rex toy in the interview, with him stating, I would like to buy the toy of it when it comes out. But I think Distortus Rex, and especially Mutadon, sounds, well, off. Especially for a movie that they keep toting as a love letter to the original. It harkens back to the original Jurassic Park. Because in all honesty, so far, this is shaping up to be the most Jurassic World coded of the Jurassic films. Jurassic World had 1 hybrid, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom also had 1 hybrid, and Jurassic World Dominion had no hybrids. And if I'm going to be honest, well, that was the direction that I personally enjoyed the most. But instead, someone grabbed the wheel and turned it way the opposite direction. And now we have 2 hybrids. And whether or not that turns out to be good or bad remains to be seen. I hope no one ignores me when I say I am still excited to see this film, and I personally am gonna go into the theater with a lot of hope that I still do enjoy it, in spite of the idea that it's not my idea of a perfect Jurassic sequel. And whether or not I end up liking it or disliking it, doesn't mean that's going to be the same result for everyone, obviously. And well, if you do so happen to like mutants, well, I'm kinda envious of you, because this franchise that seemed to be once tailor-made for my personal autistic interests, for lack of a better term, as my friends would say, is kind of unfortunately shifting more and more towards pleasing a very broad kaiju audience, which personally is okay to a certain extent. I do understand why, but at the same time too, as a big kaiju fan and a big Jurassic Park fan, I just don't really want to see those 2 worlds mixed up. And in all honesty, it just kind of makes me sad that they had this perfect franchise to showcase, well, some awesome dinosaur action. And unfortunately, they're kind of wasting that entire premise that Crichton built up with his first novel. And they're kind of wasting it on monsters that could easily have their own separate franchise or standalone movie. So approximately a minute ago, probably less, I now said we have 2 hybrids. And I'm sure with that statement alone, I already have some keyboard warriors typing in the comments. So I'm gonna beat you to your punchline here. They're not hybrids, they're mutants. And that's entirely different. Because, well, obviously I've seen that's been the big defense for the past few months. Whenever someone expressed exasperation that Jurassic World Rebirth was doing another made-up movie monster like the Indominus Rex or the Endoraptor, the response seems to have always been, those 2 are hybrids. Rebirth has mutants. It's not the same. And yes, well, I guess technically no it's not, but I think the Mutadon, a combination of pterosaur and raptor, as described by David Kep himself, makes a very strong case for how I felt at the start. They're kinda just slapping a new name on it. But in essence, it's still basically the same thing. Essentially a rose by any other name, that sort of thing. They're essentially just mixing species to make something new. Whether it was made accidentally or not, whether it turned out messed up or not, the description of the Mutadon, well, sounds just very much like a hybrid. And if I'm going to be honest, the name itself seems like a bit of a distraction tactic. It's a combination of a pterosaur and a raptor, but instead of giving it a name like Pteroraptor or Pteroraptor, basically instead of using a standard naming convention for any hybrid, such as Spinoraptor and Spinoceratops, they essentially just kind of snuck that extra word mutant in there, essentially kind of like some subliminal messaging. But in all honesty, it just kind of feels dishonest. It feels like a subliminal lie. David Kep said, "We saw in some previous Jurassic World movies that their experiments made dinosaurs bigger, meaner, and scarier. And those occurred to me and Steven Spielberg that those can't all have gone well." And yes, in previous Jurassic World movies, they did make their dinosaurs bigger, meaner, and scarier by mixing the DNA of several species with both extinct and modern day animals. They made hybrids, and the twist that Rebirth is going for is that these experiments, aka these hybrids, failed and led to some grotesque monsters that they end up calling mutants, instead of the Indominus and the Endoraptor, which were fairly successful experiments. Essentially, they cooked up fairly well in the lab. Not perfectly, obviously, but, you know, good enough. On paper, the Mutadon sounds to be like a pretty straightforward hybrid. Now, the Distortus Rex doesn't, but I expect the movie will give us some hints about what kind of DNA got mixed up with the T-Rex to lead to the D-Rex. My point for this rant exactly is, well, this doesn't feel new to me. For me personally, it feels like a retread for the hybrids of the past, but this time they didn't succeed, but failed. And I should also mention, wasn't Scorpius Rex already supposed to be a failed experiment? And I do believe Endoraptor was also hinted towards that. It wasn't quite right either. I could go along with the argument that at least mutants are something kinda new, something fresh and or surprising, instead of just another dinosaur. I could go along with that if I agreed it was true. But in all honesty, I don't think it's fresh and I don't think it's surprising and or new. So the whole D-Rex Mutadon thing is kind of underwhelming for me. And in all honesty, a little bit disappointing. But on the opposite side of things, they might also have some really cool scenes that have me on the edge of my seat. And I really do hope that that's the case. But the way I'm looking at it right now is the movie might be awesome in spite of the mutants, but not because of the mutants. And I do understand that it might be the opposite case for some other people. I'm just instating my opinion. And that's more or less, I just want to see dinosaurs be dinosaurs. But I guess I'll always have documentaries such as Prehistoric Planet. Either way, I kind of hope I got my point across. I did kind of rant a little longer than expected during this video, but I would like to hear your opinions on these new mutants in the comments section. But if you've made it this far, I definitely appreciate it because, well, making this set and doing this rant was kind of a lot of work on both ends, because making this stop motion film set took over 3 weeks in total, and as I'm doing the sound recording at this moment, we are on sound clip 238. Oh boy. But either way, if you enjoyed this video today, be sure to smash that like button as hard as a dinosaur, as I like to say, and be sure to share with your dinosaur-loving friends. And if you just so happen to be new here today, be sure to hit that subscribe button as well, I do say. And have your post notifications turned on today, because one could say I'm going to be putting this film set to work very soon, I say. Because a photo countdown is soon heading your way. Because now that our dinosaur battlegrounds are all set up today, one could say it's time to put a T-Rex to the test, I say. Because Jurassic Park T-Rex versus D-Rex will soon be on the way. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end of the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if anything. Anyway, that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.